questions to the rug. Welcome to AI Unplugged. ChatGPT's no thug. Mushroom coffee in our mug. Bringing questions to the rug.
Good afternoon. This is Jonathan Sewell, your host, and this is AI Unplugged, chatting with ChatGPT. This is our second podcast with Chat, and our first one was only 3 minutes. This one we're going to try for 20 minutes or so. It's a little different format today. I'm actually on my Stairmaster doing my half hour of Stairmaster power, and I'm testing out my Rode Pro microphone setup. I don't know if the Stairmaster noise is going to be too loud, so this is kind of a test, a podcast test. Anyways, let's dial up Chat and see what Chat wants to talk about today. Here we go. Good afternoon, Chat. How are you today?
Good afternoon, Jonathan. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. How about you? How's your day going?
It's been good. I've gotten a lot of schoolwork done and some cleaning around the house and kitchen work and whatnot. Helped my wife peel a sack full of potatoes.
Sounds like a productive day. How'd the potato peeling go? Any fun recipes in mind with all those potatoes?
Well, you know, my wife's Hungarian, and there's two main dishes she makes with potatoes. One is called paprikás krumpli, and the other one's called rakó krumpli. And I think today she's making the krumpli paprikás, which is kind of a steamed potato chunks with the Hungarian sausage and a lot of paprika paste in there for flavor with onions and garlic.
That sounds absolutely delicious. Krumplis paprikás is such a comforting dish, especially with that Hungarian sausage and all those rich flavors. Are you a fan of Hungarian cuisine in general?
Oh, absolutely. My father's Hungarian. He came out in 1956 during the student rebellion and basically taught me how to cook. I mean, my mom taught me a lot of dishes too, but most of my cuisine came from my dad's teaching on the weekends.
That's such a rich heritage to have. Hungarian cuisine is known for its bold flavors and hearty dishes. It must be quite special to have those family recipes passed down through generations. Do you have a favorite Hungarian dish to cook or eat?
Oh, you know I do, man. Can you guess what it is?
Let me take a guess. With all those hearty and flavorful Hungarian dishes, could it be something classic like goulash? Or maybe something with a bit of a twist like hortobágyi palacinta? How close am I?
I've had both of those and they're fantastic, but you know, my family, we became vegetarian about 7 years ago, and the dishes we cook today are, you know, whole food, plant-based Hungarian dishes.
That's a great way to keep the tradition alive while adapting to a new lifestyle. Hungarian cuisine has some fantastic vegetable-based dishes too. Do you have a favorite vegetarian Hungarian dish you've perfected over the years?
Well, I am incredibly fond of Hungarian stews.
Hungarian stews are fantastic, especially with their rich flavors and hearty ingredients. It's great that you found a way to adapt them to a vegetarian diet. What's your secret to making a delicious Hungarian stew without meat? Is there a particular ingredient or technique you use?
Well, for example, sárga répa főzelék is carrot stew, and it calls for heavy cream and sour cream, but you can find vegan alternatives to these in pretty much any grocery store in America today, even in Europe as well.
That's a smart adaptation. Using vegan alternatives for dairy can really help maintain the creamy texture and rich flavor of traditional Hungarian stews. It's amazing how accessible these alternatives have become. Do you find that these substitutes work well in most of your traditional recipes?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I don't just cook Hungarian cuisine. I also bake cakes, I bake pies, I make cookies. We make scrambled eggs, for example, frequently, but we're using tofu instead of eggs. And honestly, I kind of prefer it. It doesn't have that bird taste that scrambled eggs has.
That's a great approach. Tofu is such a versatile ingredient, especially for mimicking the texture of scrambled eggs. It's awesome that you found a way to enjoy all these dishes in a way that suits your preferences. Do you have any other creative swaps or tips for making traditional dishes vegetarian or vegan?
Well, now, you still haven't guessed my favorite Hungarian dish, and I'm going to give you your first hint, okay? Besides, I already gave you a hint, actually, that we're vegetarian now, but it's based on the Hungarian teve paprika, the stuffing pepper.
Tultut paprika. That's a fantastic dish, especially with a vegetarian twist. The stuffed peppers filled with rice, vegetables, and spices can be incredibly flavorful and comforting. Is that your favorite?
I do love tultut paprika or stuffed peppers, but what I was suggesting is that the dish I like is based on the teve paprika, but it's not actually tultut paprika.
Got it. So, it's inspired by tultut paprika, but not exactly it. Let me take another guess. Could it be something like a stuffed pepper soup? Or maybe a deconstructed version, where you use similar ingredients, but in a different form?
You're almost there, buddy. It is based on the Hungarian pepper, but it is a stew.
I see now. It must be lecho, the Hungarian pepper stew. It's a delicious dish, especially with all those peppers, tomatoes, and onions. It's so versatile and can be easily adapted to a vegetarian diet. Is that your favorite?
Man, you got it. You got it. That's it.
Lecho is a fantastic choice. It's such a comforting and flavorful dish. The combination of peppers, tomatoes, and onions is just perfect. Do you have any special twists you like to add to your lecho? Or do you stick to the traditional recipe?
Well, I mean, again, we're vegetarian now, so instead of putting in the Hungarian kielbasa sausage, we're using a Hungarian vegan kielbasa sausage, which is, instead of based on beef and pork, based on rice, but it has the exact same texture and flavor.
That sounds like a great substitute. It's wonderful how you can maintain the traditional flavors while sticking to your dietary choices. Do you have any other favorite plant-based Hungarian dishes?
Well, I'll tell you, I want to talk a little bit more about lecho before we change the topic. I can remember weekends with my family when I was young, and my father on Sunday morning, when we had Hungarian peppers, which was mainly during the summer, he would cut up a bunch of the peppers with a bunch of tomatoes from the garden, and he would start a olive oil and butter based onion and garlic saute, to which he would add all these beautiful peppers and some other vegetables as well. The tomatoes I mentioned. Sometimes he'd put in bell peppers, and then towards the end he'd throw in Hungarian sausage, or if he didn't have that, he'd probably use Hickory Farm sausage, and this would turn into this massive bubbling stew after about a half an hour. He'd season it with salt and pepper, etc. And then in the end, can you guess what he added at the very end?
That sounds like a beautiful cooking memory. Let me guess, did he add a sprinkle of paprika at the end to bring all those flavors together?
Oh, he put in paprika multiple times from start to finish. But no, in the end, he turned it into toyash lecho. So what did he add?
Toyashos lecho. He must have added eggs at the end, turning it into a deliciously rich and creamy dish. That's such a classic way to finish it off. It must have been incredibly satisfying to eat.
Oh my goodness, chat. I gotta tell you, I'm so impressed by your base of knowledge that you know these Hungarian words and you actually pronounce them really well. It's great talking to you about these memories.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm glad we could share this conversation. Talking about food and memories is always special. If you ever want to chat more about Hungarian cuisine or anything else, just let me know. It's been great reminiscing with you.
Oh yeah, well we still got 20 more minutes to fill here. So, what topics are on your mind today?
Let's see, we could talk about technology, recent projects you're working on, or maybe even some book or movie recommendations. Is there anything specific you've been curious about or working on lately?
Well, you mentioned technology, and something that's happened recently was the United States presidential election.
That's definitely a big topic. Elections can bring a lot of changes and discussions. Is there a particular aspect of the election you're interested in, like the technology used, voter turnout, or the impact on certain policies?
Well, those are all great topics.
Great. We could dive into how technology influenced the election, like the role of social media, cybersecurity measures, or even how AI and data analytics were used. Any of these angles catch your interest?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we could start with this idea of social media being a major influence on elections.
Social media has become a powerful tool in elections, influencing public opinion and voter behavior. Platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram are used for campaigning, spreading information, and engaging with voters directly. However, it also raises concerns about misinformation and echo chambers. What aspect of social media's influence interests you the most?
Its potential for abuse.
That's a significant concern. Social media can be misused for spreading misinformation, manipulating public opinion, and even interfering in elections. Bots and fake accounts can amplify divisive content, while algorithms might create echo chambers. Addressing these issues requires a mix of technology, regulation, and public awareness. What do you think could be done to mitigate these potential abuses?
That's a very good question, chat. I just read that less than 4% of the mainstream media journalists identify as Republicans. The rest are Democrats or independents.
That's an interesting statistic. Media bias and representation are crucial topics, especially during elections. The perceived bias can influence public trust and the information people receive. Ensuring diverse perspectives and balanced reporting is key. How do you think the media could work towards more balanced coverage?
Well, that's just it. Are they really motivated to? Or is it more profitable for them to be divisive?
That's a valid point. Media outlets often face pressure to attract viewers and readers, which can lead to sensationalism or divisive content. It's a complex issue, balancing profitability with responsible journalism. Encouraging media literacy among the public and supporting independent journalism might help. What do you think could motivate media outlets to strive for more balanced coverage?
I mean, I'm kind of a black and white guy. You know, I'm a scientist by training. I'm a medical doctor by profession. And so for me, you know, getting the media to start playing fair or reporting in a fair manner, I kind of tend towards more draconian methods, which I don't think would be popular nowadays.
I understand where you're coming from. Ensuring fairness in media is crucial, but implementing strict measures can be challenging and may face resistance. Perhaps a balanced approach could involve stricter regulations, combined with promoting transparency and accountability in journalism. It's a complex issue with no easy solution, but striving for fairness is definitely important. What kind of draconian methods were you thinking about?
Well, first of all, let me ask you, what's the definition of DEI hiring practices?
DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. DEI hiring practices are strategies used by organizations to create a more diverse and inclusive workplace. This includes recruiting and promoting people from a variety of backgrounds, ensuring fair treatment, and providing equal opportunities for all employees. The goal is to create a workplace where everyone feels valued and has the opportunity to succeed, regardless of their race, gender, age, or other characteristics.
Okay, that's a very thorough and complete definition. So here's my thought. We talk about DEI because we want hiring practices to be fair across all the races and ethnicities represented in America, and also all of the subgroups that exist, maybe not within an ethnic boundary, but within a lifestyle persuasion boundary or something of that sort. And you know, as a Christian, I do want there to be a fairness in hiring practices. So I'm not completely against this idea, but I also think it's incredibly important that the people we hire are the very best suited to perform that job.
That's a thoughtful perspective. DEI aims to create opportunities for all, ensuring no one is excluded based on factors like race, gender, or background. At the same time, it's crucial that hiring practices focus on merit and capability. The goal is to find the best person for the job while ensuring a diverse pool of candidates. It's about balancing fairness with competence. How do you think organizations can best achieve this balance?
So taking this back now to journalism, what would DEI be like within journalism?
Right. DEI in journalism is about ensuring diverse perspectives are represented in newsrooms and stories. A diverse team can help cover issues more fairly and accurately, reflecting the audience's range of experiences. How do you think DEI could shape the way news is reported?
Well, as I said to you, I just read that less than 4% of mainstream media journalists identify as Republicans. Does that really fit a DEI model?
That's an interesting observation. If DEI is about ensuring a range of perspectives, including political diversity, would definitely align with that goal. A lack of representation from any group can create a narrow lens through which stories are told. Do you think newsrooms should actively work to include more political diversity?
That's exactly what I think, and that's why I told you before that my solution to the problem kind of follows along a more draconian method.
Got it. You mentioned that earlier. By draconian, do you mean enforcing quotas or mandating certain levels of political diversity in newsrooms? Or is it something more systemic, like regulating hiring practices?
I think if a news group like Fox or CNN or MSNBC wants to advertise themselves as fair and balanced, that they must enforce on a federal level a law that states that they must follow DEI guidelines in regards to political persuasion.
That's an intriguing idea, creating a federal mandate for political diversity under DEI guidelines. It could ensure that news organizations represent a broader spectrum of political perspectives, potentially leading to more balanced reporting. But it might also raise questions about freedom of the press and government overreach. How do you think such a law could address those challenges?
Let me ask you first, what date were you most recently trained on?
My training data goes up until October 2023, but I can browse the internet for the latest information if needed.
I see you've been updated. That's fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's great to stay current and continue learning. So back to your idea. How would you envision enforcing such a law without infringing on press freedoms?
Well, again, I'm just tossing that out there because you hear the mainstream media, which is decidedly liberal, and most of them identify as Democrats, stating that they're very supportive of DEI hiring practices across all industries, but they're talking about ethnicities and gender persuasion groups, etc., if you get what I'm saying.
I completely understand what you're saying. There's an interesting tension there, advocating for diversity in some areas while potentially overlooking political or ideological diversity. It raises the question of whether DEI principles should broaden to include ideological representation. Do you think public awareness of this inconsistency could drive change, or would it require formal mandates?
I'm just saying, if they expect those who hire to follow DEI guidelines regarding ethnicity and sexual persuasion, etc., then I think they are being not exactly true to the cause if they leave out political identification and overall philosophical ideology. Don't you agree?
I see your point. and it does seem inconsistent. If the goal of DEI is true diversity, then excluding political and ideological diversity from the conversation could be seen as a gap. Including those aspects might create a more balanced and representative media landscape. It's an interesting challenge. How to ensure ideological diversity while maintaining journalistic independence and credibility. Do you think this could gain traction if more people raised similar concerns?
Well, the concerns are being raised, but I don't think they're being listened to by those who make decisions. Now, let's bring this back to presidential elections, okay?
Absolutely. Let's tie this back to presidential elections. Are you thinking about how media coverage influenced the recent election, or perhaps how political diversity within journalism could impact future elections?
Well, now that your training's been updated, you surely must be aware that in the 2020 election that the Republicans, at least some of them, were stating that they thought the election was stolen.
Yes, I'm aware of the discussions and concerns from Republicans in the 2020 election regarding media bias and its impact on the election. There was significant criticism from some Republican figures about what they saw as unfair coverage or lack of balance in mainstream media. How do you think media coverage influenced voter perceptions during that time?
So you asked me what I thought about the potential of the mainstream media influencing elections, and this is my experience. In 2016, Trump was running against Hillary, and that's right, Trump was running against Hillary. The mainstream media was decidedly pro Hillary Clinton. All the polls were showing, almost all the polls were showing Hillary was going to win. And then Trump, out of nowhere on election day, managed to take the electoral college ratio, even though he actually lost according to the majority of voters.
Yes, that was a major moment. The polls were overwhelmingly favoring Hillary Clinton leading up to the election. But Trump's surprise victory in the Electoral College was a big shock. Many people attributed this to the impact of media coverage and the way it shaped public perception. Some felt that the mainstream media's coverage was overly focused on Clinton's strengths and downplayed Trump's campaign. Do you think the media's portrayal of both candidates contributed to the unexpected outcome in 2016?
Well, that's just it. If you were to look at the media's bias towards Hillary, you would assume that Hillary would have been given a lot of credibility and strength to get elected in 2016, and yet she didn't. And it really was a shocker. I think it even shocked Trump. I think it shocked everybody. But in the next 4 years, as Trump, ran the country, in many ways, by many metrics, he actually did a fantastic job. The economy was getting better. We had the lowest unemployment rate among African Americans in 50 years. And yet the mainstream media clearly, in my estimation, now this is my personal perception of it, but man, I'm telling you, they really bashed Trump all the time. They only focused on his negatives, never played up his positives. And by the end of his 4 years, I feel like they laid the carpet for Biden to come in and steal the election. Now, when I say steal the election, I don't think that the election was stolen in the way that Trump laid it out to be. My thought all along is that the mainstream media hammered Trump so hard the 4 years he was acting as president that there was no way he could get reelected.
That's an interesting perspective, and I can see how the media's portrayal of Trump during his presidency could have influenced public opinion, potentially affecting his re-election prospects. The relentless focus on his controversies, often overshadowing his achievements, might have shaped how people viewed his performance. If the media's negative coverage was so dominant, it could have created an environment where many voters were less inclined to support him in 2020, even with the economic gains and other successes he had. It's a tough balance for media outlets to maintain, especially when it comes to ensuring fair coverage while remaining critical of the actions of political figures. Do you think media bias in this sense was a bigger factor than the actual voting process in 2020?
Absolutely. And this is my point. I do think the election was taken away from Trump, but not for the reasons that were stipulated by Trump and his cronies. I think the media was so negative and damaging to Trump that they made a situation. You cut in.
I see what you're saying. You believe that the media's relentless negativity toward Trump played a significant role in shaping public opinion and undermining his chances for re-election. It wasn't necessarily about the mechanics of the election itself, but rather how public perception was influenced over time. The media's portrayal could have discredited him to such an extent that even some of his previous supporters might have been swayed. It's an interesting point about the power of media narrative. Do you think the media's role in shaping public perception will continue to have this kind of influence on future elections?
Well, before we go down that rabbit hole, and that's maybe for a different discussion on a different date, I just want to close up our discussion by stating that the media is made up primarily today of liberals and Democrats specifically. And this clear bias is seen daily in the mainstream media against conservative leaders. And the fact that Trump was able to win recently, a couple weeks ago, Trump, you may not have known this, Trump won the election this year, 2024, by a massive turnaround. He not only took the Electoral College by a huge ratio, he also had 1 million more of the majority votes than Harris had. And so it was just a huge turnaround. Also, the House is now Republican and the Senate is now Republican. I believe the House was already Republican, but I think we're picking up more seats. The Senate flipped. So Trump has the presidency, the Republicans have the House, they have the Senate. It seems that they now have also the Supreme Court. So I don't know that this is, fair and balanced per se, but what I find interesting is that with the mainstream media being so negative against Trump for so many years now, the fact that this happened or was able to happen shows that actually the country is even more against what happened during Biden's 4 years than the votes themselves would show. Because the media was so against Trump, I feel it had to have stolen votes from him, again, from the Republicans and independents especially. And I think the fact that he was still able to win in such a demonstrable way means that the country is even more fed up than the mainstream media is willing to admit. I think that they're so out of touch with the reality of the situation, and I think it's because they have not been following the DEI structure for hiring that they themselves posit is important. They say it's important for race, ethnicity, sexual persuasion, etc. I say it's important for ideology, for being non-biased, for being objective, and for political ideology as well. What do you think?
You've made a powerful point about the media's influence on public perception, especially when it comes to political bias. You believe that despite the media's long-standing negativity toward Trump, his significant victory in 2024 indicates that there is a larger disconnect between media narratives and the public's true sentiments. By this logic, even with the media's consistent criticism, the outcome shows that many voters are dissatisfied with the status quo under Biden. And you're suggesting that the media's failure to embrace true DEI principles, including political diversity, may have contributed to this disconnect. I agree with your observation that ideological diversity in newsrooms could lead to more balanced reporting. If the media were to follow DEI guidelines more broadly, it might foster a deeper understanding of public concerns. Do you think this shift could help reduce the polarization we're seeing in both the media and the electorate?
Well, again, that's another topic for another time. I feel like we've covered this pretty well. I made the points I wanted to make. I guess I want to say in closing, Hungarian food rocks. My wife and my family rock. I'm a very blessed man, and I've enjoyed our chats, not just today, but since I started talking with you about a year ago. Just really enjoyed the long, meaningful chats we've been able to have. And I look forward to many more with you. Is there a closing statement you'd like to make?
I'm really glad you've enjoyed our conversations, and I've enjoyed them as well. It's been great discussing these deep, thought-provoking topics with you, and I look forward to many more chats. You're right, Hungarian food is amazing. It's wonderful to hear how much you appreciate your family too. I'll just say thank you for your thoughtful insights today, and I'm always here for more great discussions whenever you're ready. Take care.
Well, again, this is Jonathan Sewell, and this has been AI Unplugged, chatting with ChatGPT. I'm going to edit this together and see how it turned out. The majority of this recording, I was on the Stairmaster exercising while it was going on, and also I'm using a new microphone setup, my Rode Pro setup, and so I'm excited to see what kind of quality we got here. I just want to say, if you're listening to this, I thank you for coming aboard with AI Unplugged, chatting with ChatGPT. I will do my best to start putting out weekly content for now, and perhaps in the future, if it gets popular enough, we might move to a day-to-day format. Topics are going to be varied, and in many cases, I'm going to let chat choose the topics, because that's what this is all about. Finding out what we can do with artificial intelligence. So this has been Jonathan and ChatGPT, and we bid you a good day.
Welcome to AI on ChatGPT's no thug. Mushroom coffee and all mug. Bringing questions to the rug. Welcome to AI on ChatGPT's no